The air in Kingswell, Tennessee hadn't changed. It still smelled like pine and clay and the faint sweetness of honeysuckle. After 24 years away, 19 of them spent overseas, the rest in bases that blurred together, I thought coming home would feel like a kind of healing, like stepping into a memory that had waited patiently for me to return. But as I stepped out of the rideshare car, boots pressing against the gravel of the driveway I once helped shovel, it became clear this place didn't remember me. I stood in full uniform, creases still sharp. My duffel bag slung over one shoulder, heavy with medals, discharge papers, and one photograph of my mother taped to the inside pocket. That was the only thing I let myself hope for, that she'd be here, that her arms would be the first thing I felt when I walked through that door. But the gate wouldn't open. It was new, sleek iron, fitted with a security panel. The keypad blinked at me like an unblinking eye. I reached up to press the intercom button. It buzzed sharply, then fell silent. I tried again. Nothing. And then I heard it, the familiar creak of the front door, and there she was, Vanessa, my sister. Her hair neater than I remembered, pulled into a chignon, navy pantsuit, phone in hand. I lifted my hand, not waving, just reaching. Vanessa? She didn't answer me. She spoke into the phone instead, her voice clipped and polished. Yes, there's someone at the gate. Says her name's Isabella Monroe. Claims she used to live here. I blinked. Claims? She looked me in the eye, her expression hardening. You're trespassing. This isn't your home anymore. It took me a second to process that. I stepped closer to the gate, hand resting on the cool iron. Vanessa, I just got back. I came to see Mom. Don't, she snapped. Don't show up here like this. In that uniform, expecting something. You left. 24 years ago. We moved on. A black and white patrol car turned the corner, slow and silent, like it had made this drive before. I didn't move. The officer stepped out, a woman younger than I was when I enlisted. She looked between us. Ma'am, do you have identification? I pulled out my ID, my discharge certificate, even the letter from the Pentagon. She skimmed it, but then turned to Vanessa. This property, she said, is registered under Vanessa Monroe Flynn and Derek Flynn. There's no record of an Isabella Monroe as a current resident. I couldn't breathe. This house wasn't just wood and siding to me. It was the last place my grandfather lived. The place he promised, would always be mine. He said it the night before he died, sitting on the porch swing with me, his voice raspy but clear. This house will be yours, Bella. You'll always have a home to come back to. I swallowed hard. I grew up here, I said to the officer. I broke my arm climbing that oak. I bled into the floorboards before they put in that damn hardwood. Vanessa folded her arms. And now you bleed drama. The officer shifted. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to leave the premises. I stepped back. My boots hit the edge of the sidewalk, and I didn't even notice the tears until the cold air clung to them. My phone buzzed. A message. Just 5 words. From Mom. You should go back, Bella. That's all it said. No, I missed you. No welcome home. Just go back. I stared through the gate, through the living room window. A figure sat inside, still, unmoving. Dad? He didn't wave, didn't even look at me. The house was full of people I used to know. But the gate? The gate didn't know me anymore. The morning after, I sat in the corner booth of Marlene's diner, same one we used to sneak milkshakes from in high school. Same cracked vinyl seats, same smell of burnt coffee and bacon grease. But this time, I didn't order anything. I just sat there, still in uniform, eyes red from a night sleeping in the backseat of a rental car I hadn't planned to need. That's when Rachel Quinn walked in. She paused at the door, scanning the place until her eyes found me. I hadn't seen her in over 15 years, but the moment she slid into the booth across from me, I felt like time folded in half. I saw your name on the discharge list, she said. Didn't expect to find you at Marlene's. I tried to smile. Didn't expect to be here either. Rachel had become an attorney, real estate law mostly. The last I heard, she handled farm disputes and boundary claims, but she was always sharp, always cut straight to the point. What happened, Bella? I swallowed. I came home to see my mom. My sister called the cops, said I was trespassing. Rachel blinked. That house belonged to your grandfather. I thought so too, I paused. He told me I'd inherit it. She pulled out her iPad, fingers already moving. If that's true, there should be a will. Did you ever get a copy? No, but I remember the day he signed it. I was home on leave. He made me witness it. He even joked that Vanessa would pitch a fit. Rachel kept typing. You remember the year? 2002, August. She raised an eyebrow. You sure? Like it was yesterday. She nodded and went quiet for a few minutes, lips pursed, scrolling through databases only attorneys know how to access. Finally, she turned the screen toward me. There was a transfer recorded 3 months ago. This parcel, she pointed, was signed over to Silver Timber LLC, a holding company. My stomach dropped. I didn't sign anything. Well, someone did. She zoomed in on the PDF. Your name's on the seller's line, but look at this. The signature. It wasn't mine. It looked like mine, kind of, but not the way I wrote my M, not the way I looped the tail of the R. It was too perfect, too mechanical, like someone had copied it from a tax return. Rachel leaned in. I think this was forged. I looked away, my heart hammered against my ribs. Why? Why would they? Because you're not around, and because they didn't think you'd come back. A cold, hollow pressure started building in my chest. All I could picture was Vanessa in her navy suit, arms folded, telling me I didn't belong there. Rachel pulled out another file. The notary on this deed? He lost his license in 2020, falsified 3 DMV affidavits, still under review. He shouldn't have notarized anything. I stared at the documents, at my own name in black ink, printed like a lie. They erased me, I whispered. One line in a will, Rachel said softly, can change everything. And if that line was altered, you still have a case. I turned toward the window. Outside, the town went on like nothing had happened. People sipping coffee, kids riding bikes. Meanwhile, my family had rewritten history and sold my legacy like it was just another asset. Can you help me? I asked. Rachel nodded. But you need to be ready. If they faked your signature, if they funneled the sale through a holding company, this isn't just a family dispute. This could be fraud, conspiracy, maybe worse. I breathed in, deep and steady. I'm not just here to take the house back, I said quietly. I want to know what they've been hiding inside it. She studied my face. Then we start today? The message was handwritten. A single strip of paper, folded and slipped beneath my windshield wiper like a secret no one wanted to say out loud. If you're the real Isabella, come to Alley 4, midnight, alone. No signature, no explanation, but I knew better than to ignore it. That night, I parked a block away from the alley behind the old bakery, now boarded up, its faded signage a ghost of the town I once knew. The night air was thick, damp with Tennessee summer, and I could hear every crunch of gravel beneath my boots like it was announcing me to the dark. He was already there. Mid-40s, square jaw, weathered hands, combat boots. His name was Tommy Beckett. We went to the same high school, enlisted around the same time. I hadn't seen him since the funeral for his younger brother, but when our eyes met, something familiar settled between us. Shared silence only war veterans understand. He didn't say hello, just nodded toward the fence behind the Monroe house. They say you went off the rails, he muttered. Unstable, can't hold a job, dangerous. I let that word hang for a second before answering. They said a lot of things when I wasn't here to defend myself. He nodded once, then pulled a small flashlight from his pocket, shielding the beam with his hand. Come here, you need to see this. We walked behind the bakery, through a narrow side path that cut behind the old shed my grandfather built. Past the broken swing set and the rusted barbecue pit where I learned to roast marshmallows. And then we reached the chain-link fence, a thin veil separating my childhood from whatever secret my family was now hiding. Beyond it was the back entrance to the basement, once used for canned goods and garden tools. Now it had security cameras, an industrial lock, and motion sensors glowing faintly red in the dark. They've been bringing in crates, Tommy said. Every Tuesday night, unmarked trucks. Plates vanish before they pull in, always after midnight. I narrowed my eyes. What kind of crates? Big ones, like military supply, refrigerated units humming loud. And your sister's husband? He's there, every time. Never says a word, always wears gloves. I blinked. Gloves? Tommy looked at me, his voice low. Because fingerprints matter. My skin crawled. This wasn't just a real estate scheme. This wasn't just inheritance fraud. Something bigger was happening behind the place that was supposed to be mine. And then I remembered something. The last time I saw Derek Flynn, Vanessa's husband, was at my grandfather's funeral. He had pulled me aside, polite smile, fake concern. You should stick to places with guns, Lieutenant. This town isn't your terrain anymore. At the time, I thought it was condescending. Now it sounded like a warning. I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and pressed the small recorder. The red light blinked to life. I crouched near the fence, low and quiet, camera clipped to my lapel, lens angled toward the basement door. Midnight came like thunder in slow motion. 2 trucks, black, no headlights. 4 men stepped out. 2 wore caps low over their faces. 1 carried a clipboard. The last? Derek. He moved with the ease of someone in control, directed the unloading, didn't flinch when one of the crates thudded too hard against the ground, didn't react when one of the men, armed, disappeared inside the house. Then I heard it. From inside the basement, faint but sharp, a voice I hadn't heard directly in years. If she finds out, cut the tie, no warning. I froze. It was my father. I backed away slowly, hands shaking, camera still recording. I had spent years in combat zones, deciphering threats from shadows. But nothing prepared me for the moment I realized my own blood had become the thing I needed to survive. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the rental car parked 2 blocks from the house I used to call mine, recorder clutched like it might dissolve in my hands. I played it back, over and over. That voice. My father's voice, calm, precise. If she finds out, cut the tie. No warning. No one said my name, but they didn't need to. There was only one she they were hiding from. By sunrise, I knew what I had to do. I drove to the cheapest extended stay motel in town, paid in cash, and locked the door behind me. The room smelled like mildew and industrial cleaner, but it was quiet, safe, the kind of place people don't ask questions. I reached deep into my duffel, past the medals, the files, the uniform folded too neatly to be from a normal life, and there it was. An old military-issue hard drive, encrypted, labeled Osprey Vault A3 Monroe Retwein. I hadn't touched it in years. It wasn't meant for this. Originally, it held my field notes, cybersecurity patterns, archived procurement logs from my final 2 deployments, but I'd always been a compulsive recorder, a cataloger, a collector of digital truth. They thought they erased me from paper, but they forgot who I used to be, a decorated analyst for Cyber Command, the one who found hidden breaches no one else could, the one who always backed everything up. I booted up the system. The password flashed across the screen. My fingers moved on instinct. Access granted. The first folder I opened made my stomach tighten. Monroe Will 2002 scan. There it was, a scanned PDF of my grandfather's will, unaltered, clear as day. His signature, my name, the house address, and a notarized statement saying, I leave the property at 216 Riverbend to my granddaughter Isabella Monroe in full as sole heir. It was dated, signed, witnessed, and it did not include any clause for future sale or transfer. I had the original, and I had backed it up when no one else even remembered it existed. Then came the next hit, a video file, grainy but clear. My grandfather, sitting in his study, a mug in one hand, paper in the other, camera slightly tilted like it had been set on a shelf without much thought. If you're watching this, Bella, I guess I'm gone. I want you to know this house, it's yours. Don't let them take it from you. I paused the video. For a second, I just sat there, staring at the frozen frame. His eyes kind, tired, but certain. And then, as if fate had a dark sense of humor, my phone buzzed. No caller ID, just a message. You're playing with fire. I have your military psych report. Want the court to read it? I stared at the words. I knew the game they were playing. Make me look unstable, question my credibility, paint me as the dangerous vet they'd already whispered about. But what they didn't know? I kept everything. Every signed affidavit, every scanned contract, every procurement form I'd ever been tied to. And now, every lie they built was balancing on a string of falsified documents and assumptions that I wouldn't come back. I opened my email, composed a message to Rachel. Subject line, this changes everything. Attached were 3 files. The original will, the notarized video, the metadata log proving the signature match on the forged deed wasn't mine. Then I hit send. I sat back, let the chair creak beneath me, and whispered to no one. You thought you could bury me, but you forgot who I am. The courthouse in Franklin County was quiet that morning, too quiet for what was about to happen. Rachel and I stood just outside the double glass doors, her briefcase clutched in one hand, my folder of evidence in the other. I had traded my uniform for a gray blazer, but the weight of my rank never really left me. I was here not as a soldier this time, but as a witness. As a woman who'd been erased and was now here to be read back into history, loud and clear. Inside, we walked past rows of polished floors and marble pillars. Rachel's heels clicked with certainty. Mine barely made a sound. At the clerk's desk, she handed over the court motion, the one stamped with petition to freeze title pending fraud review. The clerk skimmed the first few pages, then looked up, eyes widening when she reached the notarized video still image of my grandfather, frozen mid-sentence. She stood, left the desk without a word, and returned less than 2 minutes later with 2 deputies flanking her sides. The judge has reviewed the motion, she said. He's issuing an emergency injunction, effective immediately. Rachel nodded. Then you'll want to send someone to serve the owners before they attempt to transfer anything further. The clerk gave a tight nod. We'll send them now. 10 minutes later, we were parked outside the house. No hiding, no shadows, no sitting down the street like we had before. This time, we pulled into the driveway. Vanessa's Lexus was there. So was Derek's black pickup, the one I'd seen the night crates were unloaded in the dark. Rachel reached into her bag and handed me the official envelope. You should be the one to serve it, she said quietly. I walked up the steps I hadn't touched in over 2 decades. My hand trembled for only half a second before I rang the doorbell. The door opened. Vanessa stared at me, And for a moment, I swear I saw something behind her eyes. Fear, maybe. Or fury that couldn't find a place to land. Then Rachel stepped up beside me, all steel and calm. "We're here to serve you," she said, holding out the injunction. "Per order of the Franklin County Court, any transfer, lease, or modification of this property is suspended pending legal review of forgery and title tampering." Vanessa's hand shook as she took the envelope. "Is this a joke?" Derek appeared behind her, arms folded, expression smug as ever. "You really want to go this route?" he said, voice low. "You don't know who you're messing with." I met his gaze, unblinking. "I used to work internal cyber investigations at the Pentagon," I said. "I've seen men like you bluff before. They always fold." His lips parted, but no sound came. And then I said the one thing he hadn't expected. "I have the footage, I have the will, and I have your name on a falsified vendor contract tied to federal defense supply chains." For the first time, Derek flinched. Vanessa's voice was brittle. "You're just trying to destroy what's left of this family." Rachel cut in sharply. "No, you already did that when you sold her birthright and tried to cover it with shell companies." I turned, walked down the steps, heart pounding, not from nerves, but from clarity. The door slammed behind us, loud and sharp. In the car, Rachel looked at me. "They'll strike back," she said. "Hard. Are you ready?" I nodded once, voice firm. "They built this house on lies, but now the foundation's cracking. Let it fall." The next morning, Rachel's office smelled like burnt coffee and tension. I sat across from her conference table, watching a live news ticker crawl across the screen on the wall. The headline was subtle but telling. "Local Veterans Advocate files court motion alleging family deed fraud." No names, not yet, but the storm was brewing. Rachel placed 2 new folders in front of me. These came in overnight from Kayla. Kayla was our ghost, the digital analyst I'd met through old defense contacts. She didn't like meetings. She liked results. And what she'd found was damning. "The first is Claire's banking history," Rachel said, "and the second, Derek's corporate trail." I opened the first folder. My eyes caught the numbers and froze. Vanessa declared less than $60,000 in annual income for her nonprofit role, but she's received over $280,000 in offshore transfers over the past 14 months. "All routed through Silver Timber LLC," Rachel added, which, by the way, was registered using a Florida mailbox that doesn't exist anymore. I turned to the second folder. Inside was a wire diagram, shell companies, overlapping addresses, and 3 purchase orders tied to military-grade communication equipment, all linked to Derek's name. "Martech Solutions," I read aloud. "Isn't that the company that bid on a DoD logistics contract in 2018, Rachel nodded, "and was flagged for falsifying compliance reports." Kayla dug up a redacted internal audit. The contract was sealed quietly after someone upstairs pulled strings. I closed the folder slowly. "And you're saying my clearance, my credentials were used?" "Yes," she said softly, "to validate the submission. Without your name in the metadata, they wouldn't have cleared the first step." It felt like the air had been knocked out of me. I had spent 24 years in uniform, building trust, proving myself at every station, in every country, through every sleepless deployment. And they used my legacy as a tool to launder money, to steal, to manipulate. "I didn't just lose a house," I whispered. "I became their access point." Rachel didn't argue. Instead, she handed me a final document, a sworn affidavit, signed by a former notary who had worked in the local county office 15 years ago. I notarized William Monroe's original will. The version submitted in 2023 is a forgery. My records confirm the document was altered after my resignation. My father, he hadn't just signed off, he'd helped them cover their tracks. And yet he was still walking free, still attending community luncheons, still waving politely to neighbors who never questioned why his daughter vanished from every family record like she never existed. Rachel leaned in. "It's time to take this federal." I nodded. She picked up her phone. "I'll contact the U.S. Attorney's Office in Nashville. If the defense contracts are tied to your credentials, we're looking at federal procurement fraud, possibly even racketeering." My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You've made your point. Now let it go before we both lose everything." No name, but I knew the cadence. It was from my father. I showed it to Rachel. She raised her brow. "You know what this means?" I nodded. "He's not warning me," I said. "He's begging." The courtroom was silent. Not the heavy kind of silence that follows tragedy. This was sharper. A silence that pressed against your lungs, that waited for things to break. I stood at the witness stand in a navy blazer, military ribbons pinned just above my heart. Not to prove anything, not anymore, but because I earned them, and because they tried to erase everyone. Across from me sat Vanessa, face pale and stiff. Next to her, Derek, hands clamped so tightly they looked bone white. And beside them, my father, head bowed, not from remorse, but from the weight of a name he no longer controlled. The prosecutor adjusted his mic. Miss Monroe, please describe what was taken from you. I didn't look at him. I looked at the judge, and then at the jury. My name was taken, I said softly. My place in my family, my home, and my identity, used without consent to gain access to government contracts they had no legal right to touch. He nodded. And do you have proof? I handed over the drive, metadata logs, recorded audio, financial transfers, a video of my grandfather stating his last will, and sworn affidavits confirming the current deed is forged. The courtroom absorbed it like oxygen after smoke. The defense tried to recover, argued that it was all misunderstanding, that Vanessa acted under duress, that Derek had no knowledge of the full scheme, that my father only wanted to protect the family. But none of it held. Because this time, they weren't the ones writing the story. The prosecutor's voice cut clean across the defense's closing remarks. What they stole wasn't just a house, he said. They stole legacy. They used military clearance as a weapon. They exploited trust, familial and federal, for personal gain. This is not just betrayal, it's a crime. The jury deliberated for just under 2 hours. When they returned, the foreman didn't hesitate. We find Vanessa Monroe guilty of conspiracy, wire fraud, and title forgery. We find Derek Flynn guilty of contract fraud, identity theft, and money laundering. We find William Monroe complicit in deed tampering and obstruction of justice. The judge's gavel echoed through the chamber. Vanessa Monroe, sentenced to 5 years federal. Derek Flynn, 8 years, no parole. William Monroe, 3 years probation, loss of professional licensing, and full restitution. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just exhaled, like something in me had been held underwater for a decade and was finally surfacing. Outside, the press waited, but I walked past them all. I didn't need headlines, I didn't need revenge, I needed closure. And I had it. That night, I drove to the Defense Service Library in Nashville. There's a wall there, marble, polished, quiet, etched with the names of those who served with honor. I hadn't come to see mine, not yet. But as I stood there, the librarian tapped my shoulder. It was added today, she said, smiling gently. I turned, and there it was. Colonel Isabella Monroe, Cyber Command, Valor, Integrity, Truth. No family portrait ever meant that much. No inheritance ever came close. I stood for a long time, hand resting on the cool stone. They had tried to erase me, to cast me out of my own bloodline, but in the end, I reclaimed everything they buried, and I carved my name where they couldn't touch it. Some wounds don't show on the skin, they live in the silence of being erased. Isabella Monroe didn't just reclaim a house, she reclaimed her name, her truth, and her place in a story that others tried to write without her. In a world where reputation can be bought and loyalty forgotten, this story reminds us that justice doesn't always come with noise. Sometimes it comes in the form of an old hard drive and a woman who refused to stay quiet. If you've ever been cast aside, ever told you don't belong, ever had to fight just to be seen, remember this. Truth doesn't need to shout, it only needs someone brave enough to speak. Thank you for watching this far. If this story moved you, please consider subscribing to this channel. We share real stories of quiet strength, redemption, and justice. And if someone you know needs a reminder of their worth, share this video with them. Because sometimes the loudest victories are the ones fought in silence.